Hey guys, welcome to the 49th C programming tutorial, and in this tutorial we're going to be looking at the rest of the character functions. But before we get to that, we're going to be looking at all of the escape characters in C. So we already know a couple of these escape characters. We know the new line character and the horizontal tab. So if I were to go ahead right here and print out onto the screen Joe, tab, Smith, and then new line is cool. When I run this, basically what it's going to do is it's just going to put a tab in between Joe and Smith, and then on a new line, so the line after Joe Smith, it's going to put is cool. So when I run this, I should get Joe Smith is cool. Yep, as you can see, there's a tab in between Joe and Smith, and is cool is on a different line. Perfect. Alright, so the next escape character that we're going to be looking at is /A, which basically just stands for alert, and on my computer it's just going to beep. So when I run this, I should just get a beep out of my program. Perfect. And if I were to put 3/A's, I should get 3 beeps out of my computer. Yep, perfect. Alright, so that escape character is not very common, although I guess you could use it if there was an error in your program. Alright, so the next escape character that we're going to be looking at is /B, which stands for backspace. So if I were to go ahead and just type book /B for backspace and then put a T, basically what it's going to do is just print book, and then it's going to backspace, so it's going to delete this K right here and then print a T out onto the screen. So we should get boot when this runs. Perfect. Alright. Then the next escape character that we have to look at is /F. And this /F stands for form feed. And there's not really that much to say about this escape character because it went out of use a long time ago. Form feed was used for printers a long time ago. If this character was sent to an old printer, it would basically just tell the printer to go to the next page. So we really have no use for it. It's just one of those characters that you don't need to remember. Then the next one we have to look at is /R, and /R stands for carriage return. And basically what it's going to do is just move the cursor to the beginning of the current line. So if we were to go ahead right here and just print out Adam and then /R for carriage return and then Bob, basically what it's going to do is it's just going to print out Adam onto the screen. Then it's going to hit this /R, this carriage return, and it's going to move the cursor to the beginning of this line. So it's going to move it right here. Then it's going to print out Bob, so it's going to print out B-O-B, overwriting this ADA right here. So when we run this, we should get Bob, and then there should still be this M right here. So when I run this, I should just get Bob M. Perfect. Alright, so there's really not that much to the carriage return character. Alright, and then the last one that we have to look at is just another one of those out-of-date characters. Again, this character was used on printers. This /V just stands for vertical tab and would basically just tell the printer to skip down a few lines. Alright, so just another one of those characters that you don't have to remember. Alright, so now that we've looked at all the escape characters, we can now move on to the actual character functions. And the first character function that we're going to be looking at is called isControl. And this function will return non-zero if the character that we pass in as a parameter is a control character. And control characters are in between 0 and 31, and it also includes 127. So if the character is in between 0 and 31, or the character is 127, then it's considered a control character. And these control characters are basically just reserved characters. So all of our escape characters are located inside of this range, as well as the null terminating character. And there are some other characters in there as well. I'm just not going to be going over all of them. So if we were to go ahead right here and just pass through /n, so the new line character, and print out what this function returns, we should get a non-zero number since /n, or the new line character, is a control character. So I just print out as an integer and run this, and I should get a non-zero number out on my screen. Yep, perfect. Alright, so now if I were to pass through the null terminating character, the null terminating character is also a control character. So if I run this, I should get a non-zero number. perfect. But if I were to pass through something that isn't a control character, such as the letter D, and run this, then I should get a 0 onto my screen. Perfect. Alright, and the next character function that we have to look at is just called isPrint, and this is the exact opposite of isControl. IsPrint will basically just determine whether or not if the character we pass through is a printing character. And printing characters are in between 32 and 126. And these basically just include the space, all the letters, digits, and symbols. So if I were to go ahead and pass through a space and run this, I should get a non-zero number. Perfect. And if I were to pass through just some symbol like a percent sign and run this, then I should also get a non-zero number. Perfect. But if I were to go ahead and pass through a control character like form feed and run this, then I should get a 0 on my screen. Perfect. And remember, we're getting a 0 onto my screen because form feed is not a printing character. Alright, and the next function is called isGraph, and this is basically the exact same thing as isPrint. The only difference is when we pass through a space as the character, it's going to return a 0. So if I pass through a space, we're going to get a 0 onto my screen, but other than that, it's the exact same function as isPrint. So if I go ahead and pass through a letter, I'm going to get a non-zero number, but if I were to pass through some control character like horizontal tab, so /T, and run this, then I should get a 0. Yep, perfect. Then the next character function that we have to look at is just called isPunct, and this will return a non-zero number if we pass through a printing character that isn't a space, letter, or a digit. So if I were to just go ahead and pass through a printing character that isn't a space, letter, or digit, such as the money symbol, and run this, then I should get a non-zero number. But if I were to pass through some digit like 3 and run this, I should get a 0. Or if I were to pass through a control character like the null terminating character and run this, then I should get a 0 onto my screen. Perfect. Alright, and the last character function that we have to look at is just called isSpace, and this will return a non-zero number if we pass through the space character, form feed, new line, carriage return, tab, or vertical tab. So if I go ahead right here and just pass through space, I should get a non-zero number. If I pass through form feed /F, I should get a non-zero number. And if I were to pass through just the tab, which is /T, and run this, I should also get a non-zero number. But if I were to pass through anything besides space, form feed, new line, carriage return, tab, or vertical tab, like number 6, and run this, I should get a 0. Yep, perfect. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this tutorial. We've gone through all of the character functions in C, so see you guys.